Today I'm going to talk about the effects of the peak relational training system on a 2-year-old child. We assessed the acquisition of 2 programs using the peak relational training system. The first was the peak program 4B, which was one-step motor imitation, and the other was program 5A from peak, vocal imitation. And we did this using a multiple baseline design across behaviors. The participant for this experiment was Amelia Mia J, and she's a typically developing 22-month-old. And she attends a class for toddlers once a week where they do nursery rhymes, arts and crafts, and games. So we performed this intervention at Mia's grandparents' house in their front room, which included a couch, a love seat, a chair, and a coffee table. And we were sitting on the carpet. And there weren't any toys around other than the stimuli that we were using. So as we said before, we used 2 programs, so that involved 2 different behaviors or dependent variables. And the first one was imitation of a one-step motor action. So we would ask Mia to imitate something like clapping or shaking her head. And the second was vocal imitation, where we would ask her to repeat letter sounds. And that would make our independent variable the peak relational training system. So as I said before, we were using direct training programs 4B and 5A, and these involved Amelia receiving reinforcement in the form of tangibles contingent on her performing the target response that we were looking for. And that also allowed for us to use multiple prompts with her if she didn't get it on the first try. So here I'll explain how we actually measured the behavior in order to translate it into data to put onto a graph. So the person conducting the experiment would say, Amelia, do this, and then make either a movement or a letter sound that she should imitate. And then we would score her response to that. So each time we did that, it was considered a trial. And we would do that 10 times to make up what we called a session. So for each behavior, there would be 10 trials per session. And while we were implementing the peak program, we would use the peak scoring system to score each response. As you can see on the slide, the peak scores range from 0 to 10, and they're based on the number of prompts that were required in order to get a correct response. And during the baseline phase, since we were not using the peak system, there were not any extra prompts. So because of that, we would score the response as either a 0, that she did not give the correct response, or a 10, she did give the correct response. And once we had a score for all 10 trials in a session, we would calculate the total response score. So we would add up the scores from each trial and then divide that sum by 100. To determine Mia's preference regarding the rewards that she would earn, we used suggestions by her mother to create a preference assessment, and we conducted that 2 times during the experiment just to avoid satiation or any boredom with the current reward. So the first reward she chose was cookies, and then the second reward she chose was the camera on a smartphone. So we used a multiple baseline design across 2 behaviors, and that was a total of 8 sessions, 10 trials in each session. For the one-step motor imitation, the baseline phase lasted 2 sessions until it was stable, and the treatment phase was the remaining 6 sessions. And for vocal imitation, the baseline lasted longer for 4 sessions, and treatment phase was the remaining 4 sessions. And here we can see the results displayed on 2 line graphs. And for both behaviors during baseline, we can see that her responding was very low and stable. And then as soon as the peak direct training program was introduced, Mia immediately began performing correct responses at very high levels. So these results show that the peak direct training system was clearly effective in increasing both of the target behaviors that we worked on with Mia. So we would definitely recommend using the peak programs in the future for Mia and with other children as well to help teach skills similar to these. Thank you so much for your time and have a good day.